Hola. Hey, bro. Morning. They called me there. I know they even, I just asked about you from Hey, come on, when you call you tonight, see you. But we will agree. No, I mean this side. Okay. Wait, check. There's space. Maybe close up.
Where are you going?
Yeah, that's okay, because he was over there, but I thought it was table. If they open it, they can go with you.
Hello. Sorry. This you know, these are the things they will not allow us to stay. And these are Andy, please. Sorry. These are not allowed. They are saying that
This is a better
So you have to pull your delivery. If you pull out, they will still disturb. The only thing is that you cannot move them. You have 4 ministers coming. So you have to create an alternative for yourself. You wouldn't move the ministers for you. Or when they go back, you still do something. No. What are you suggesting? What are you suggesting? I want to know just maybe you can just adjust this and this so that you can just be already and that. So you can. These are best. Yes.
we need to, the essence of the talk, to be honest, the ministers want to see this being welcome.
So you know, they are not the only ones. Most of media houses
They are still coming.
Exactly. So you can just amend it. Just make it. Efforts ló gbé lọ. Ọlọ́run ló ní kí efforts wà. Road lẹ̀ wá máa ń lọ. Me. Me, that's left here.
What is that? Very fine.
Ẹ kú ní ọjọ́. Báwo ni? Ṣé kò rẹra? Really? You know,
Who get this mic? Because she's head of operation. No, head of office. it's better on YouTube because this one. Ayoade, why you not doing that? Can you see it from your angle? There, look with your flag.
This is. No, we are seeing everything. The two flags.
Sorry. I mean, I'm talking about the you can't say anything now. Just the this the thing is looking nice.
The mic is off.
You know what happened in the last? Chairman. See, I just calm down. Wait, I want everybody to listen to me now. Okay? No, all of you don't worry. Yes, I need to say something. Listen to me.
I don't do yes, it's 5:30. Yeah. I see for my house.
Just anytime we go, just remind me say waiting club don't carry. No, we're first not going to chamber. Be there where you want.
Show connect anyway.
Oh, what a peak.
maybe let's go there if maybe that's possible, but if you have the chances to sit there, then some people are
celebrate the event today. So we're happy to tell you that we will have tea and coffee outside for everybody whilst we wait the arrival of dignitaries. Thank you very much. Although some of you dignitaries, Mr. Khan, are here already.
Yes, sir. come back.
And I look, even me, why should I be there? Because I'm not going to give money to UNICEF. But then I said, $100 million to UNICEF. That's killing them. That's what is killing me. Even to have a due diligence from my legal office, they take crypto. Okay, there's somebody coming around my fix with somebody. They will take the legal fix and raise it. Oh, we need to talk to them. All of these things, it's me. I tell you, this now I'm completely like now, just now that's what I'm saying. I'm bringing FC Barcelona here to play a game to support education. And the first lady was in Nigeria. I think she has to say that from the part of the organization. We didn't even have support. That's what she was telling me yesterday. No. Why was it? Quality of production, fine way. Even if anything is in fact, I wanted to put the reply before and call them for me. I told them why call them. I told them sharp that I'm very because you know me, I'm sharp. But she wants us to be with her. Yesterday she called me and said, yeah, but my husband didn't know. All I knew was yesterday she said, you for this organization, you need to be there. Yeah, but I said, I mean, tell me, last thing I made this with my brother in a school service.
Yeah.
Now I tell him, okay, for reason I know. I mean, I can't just be like this. But you come to me and you see what I do we are telling you. And you are Nigerians and you go and talk to them. And all of them. Now, to maintain the team as one, I will be living in Nigeria. Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And that's the but frankly speaking, tomorrow,
How are you doing, man? Good to see you. Hey, it's 2.5. How are you doing? Okay. I'm fine. Thank you. Good to see you. Family okay? Okay. Hoping to start next week. Great. We'll do HRP. They came, they looked around, they said Nairobi is still better. So I tried your charm, I lost the activities. So that's what we do over here. New strategies getting and once we get to the school for the big one, the others will follow. Yes. The big one is yes, once I get either the legend or the American, we get the message. We got the message yesterday. Yeah, it's smaller than last year, but it's okay. It's 2 years.
I know I heard this is one man. Oh my God, man.
It will define the jobs we have. It will define our jobs, right? Let's go do our jobs. We'll see how. We know how people we use our knowledge of freelance. Yeah. And we will go to work. I'll need to talk to you.
Very good, excellent. So, from the ambassador who has to attend a ad hoc here in Japan.
I'll go some.
He happened to ask me this morning to find out if this for a summer. Program is defeated, everything's fine out there, and we can access all the cities. Actually, would like someone to tell us the actual videos that are not accessible. What is the truth, according to me?
Never say finish this story. On our Iliad is to do.
Anybody else?
No need to teach.
Yeah.
I don't give you the grace after this assignment. I give you the grace after this assignment. I come out.
After this assignment?
Next one. We will drop them now. Adults. Then if they don't say me, you can't go, we'll drop them. I mean, they will go drop us. Independent of the minister now. You wait. I tell you that you meet me here. Start looking for those things. I don't go beg for what you from me. I don't go beg for visual from me. I will not even beg for anything from you. Don't use it against me.
So now account. Now I don't open account.
Bob, don't use that one. Use that one. Which one are you? Why? I've never seen it. Yeah, I think you should have. Get work.
No,
Every guys, know your position as you come out.
Finally, have your attention, please. It's wonderful to see so many people recognizing each other and greeting old friends. I'm sure we will have a wonderful opportunity to do that during lunch after the proceedings. As we know, we have several ministers, ambassadors, and several dignitaries here present who have other very pressing engagements. So I would like to start as close as possible to Swiss timing. The program is due to start at 11 o'clock. We are now 6 minutes past, so I can see His Excellency the Ambassador saying we know that it's not Swiss timing. The program is being distributed and they're just coming into the room. You will get them shortly. I would like to kindly have silence in the room, please. Thank you. Good morning. And it is a very simple task that I have today. My name is Dr. Ayoade, Alakija, known to most of you as Dr. Ayoade. It has been my singular honor and privilege to work together with our colleagues in the UN and the other international organizations and national organizations under the leadership of the Honorable Minister of State, the Ministry of Budget and National Planning, to put together this year's HRP. This time last year, in February, I think almost exactly this week, and the Timmy from Norway reminded me I was in Norway freezing as we prepared for the Oslo Humanitarian Conference on Nigeria and the Lake Chad region. It is the success of that that brings us here today. So my job is simple. It is to introduce the event. It is to recognize the presence of Honourable Minister, the Honourable Minister of Health, Professor Ayoade, the Honourable Minister of Water Resources, the Honourable Minister of Agriculture, the Honourable Minister of State for Budget and Planning, Ahmed. It is my honour to introduce the representative of the Executive Vice Chairman of PCNI, to introduce and to recognise the representative of National Security Advisor for Nigeria. It is also my honour and my privilege to welcome members of Senate here present and members of the House of Representatives here present. We also have representatives from the Governor of Borno State, the Governor of Yobe State, and the Governor of Adamawa State. We have also here in our presence distinguished guests from, and our friends from, and partners from the international community. We welcome, first of all, the United Nations Resident Coordinator and Humanitarian Coordinator, Edward Kalon. Welcome. We also welcome His Excellency, the United States Ambassador, Mr. Stuart Symington. Your Excellency, welcome. We welcome the Swiss Ambassador. We welcome the Finnish representative, the Norwegian Ambassador's representative, Pippi. We welcome the representative of the British Ambassador, Ms. Demi Palmer. We welcome the representatives of the, I think I've said, Finnish, French Embassy, the Netherlands. We have so many partners represented here today, and of course the EU. We recognise the presence of the Deputy EU Ambassador, who is here with us this morning. I have so many people to recognise, and we'll do that over the course of the programme today, but I shall walk you very quickly through the introduction, the welcome, which will be given by the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Budget and Planning shortly, and then we shall have remarks by the UN RCHC, followed by remarks by His Excellency, the Ambassador General of Government, as we launch that very, very important document. And then we'll be asking with the honour and pleasure to thank you. Now I invite to the podium the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Budget and Planning, Mr. Alakija.
Thank you. And I will follow that foundation. So I don't need to mention names that we recognize again. And also so I don't fall in complete fall on you recognizing the service. You know, when you go to the people like this, and some people are not recognizing what others are recognizing. And you write my name down in the black book, I really recognize it. express the appreciation of the government of Nigeria to our donors and development partners for their support to arresting the menace of Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast, particularly in Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa, that were severely affected by Boko Haram insurgency. We appreciate your various intervention programs and projects in the region. Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished participants, the launch of the 2018 Humanitarian Response Plan is in the right direction to sustain humanitarian activities in the Northeast. You may wish to recall that the first response support to the affected population of their country. This will facilitate transparent reporting of interventions to the good people of Nigeria and other stakeholders. This basically will ensure achievement of value for money. Once again, I welcome you all and wish you a very successful celebration this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Next on the program, we have the United Nations RCHC, who holds the posts of the resident coordinator for the UN, the humanitarian coordinator for the UN, the resident representative for the UNDP, and also the chief of security, I believe it is, for the UN in Nigeria. Mr. Long, you're welcome to the program.
Honorable Minister and other representatives of the government of Nigeria, distinguished ambassadors and members of state, represented here, fellow humanitarians, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure, I have to repeat it 3 times, that I will join my sister, the Honorable Minister of State for Budget and National Planning, Madam Zainab Ahmed, today to launch the 2018 Humanitarian Response Plan, what we call as humanitarians, the HRP for Northeast Nigeria. This plan demonstrates the commitments of the international community to the people of Nigeria. It is also a clear and positive indication of the strong and continued partnership between us, the international humanitarian community, and the government of Nigeria. As we know, the humanitarian crisis in northeast Nigeria has spilled over into the Great Lakes region, and we are all aware of the fact that it is one of the most severe humanitarian crises in the world today, and it is currently in the 9th year. This crisis is a protection crisis, first and foremost, and has evolved over the years into a serious food security and nutrition crisis. 7.7 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance this year in the worst affected states of Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe. These are people who have been displaced and are living in camps or host communities. These are people
who have returned home, nothing. And these are people living in other areas that are having humanitarian. 6.1 million of these people have been targeted for humanitarian assistance in the 2018 Humanitarian Response Plan by 60 organizations, including UN agencies and international and national non-governmental organizations. The humanitarian assistance in the appeal ranges from food, protection, water, shelter, and sanitation to medicine, education, and agricultural support, and will be delivered to vulnerable women, children, and men across the 3 states. These figures, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and those in the document you'll be taking along with you today, have been arrived at after meticulous and thorough consultation with all humanitarian partners, including the government of Nigeria. The aim of the 2018 Humanitarian Response Plan that we'll be launching today is to build on the humanitarian work carried out in previous years, and we have 3 strategic objectives that we have all agreed upon to pursue. The first is to provide life-saving emergency assistance to the most vulnerable people in conflict-affected areas, ensuring that assistance is timely and to scale. The second is to ensure that all assistance promotes the protection, safety, and dignity of affected population and is provided equitably to women, girls, men, and boys. The third is to help people kickstart their lives again and also reconstruct the foundation of their lives so that they can better prepared for face future crises. This includes 1.3 million people who have returned home, but also includes those who have decided to stay where they are and try and rebuild their lives. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, while nothing should undermine the commitment to principled humanitarian action, there is a shared moral imperative to sustainably reduce people's dependency on humanitarian aid and support self-reliance. This year, we, a community of 60 organizations working closely with the government of Nigeria, will be implementing the 2018 HRP. And in this HRP, we will aim to provide food assistance, including through agriculture, to 3.7 million people in the 3 affected states in northeast Nigeria. Because grave violations of human rights continue to take place on a daily basis, we aim to support 2.7 million vulnerable women, children, and men with protection services. Medical care is also a priority and will be provided to 5.1 million people in 2018. Many children and pregnant and nursing women are malnourished as a result of the crisis, and nutritional supplements will be provided to 2.7 million people in 2018. In many locations, access to safe drinking water and adequate sanitation facilities remains a big problem. We will aim to support 2.7 million people in need of these basic services. We will provide shelter and basic household items to 1.3 million persons living in camps or host communities. About 2.2 million children and teachers will be supported through education assistance, including through the provision of safe space for learning, school supplies, and teacher trainings. Finally, for longer-term impact, 2.7 million people will be supported in accessing basic public services and restarting their lives. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all of the above interventions will be guided on a daily basis by the humanitarian principles, namely humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. Last year, the humanitarian community provided life-saving assistance to 5.6 million people in the 3 worst affected states in northeast Nigeria, namely Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe. Several successes were achieved. Notably, the number of food insecure people was reduced from 5.1 million to 3.9 million. A cholera outbreak was contained through the innovative use of an oral cholera vaccine. 1.3 million farmers were assisted to help improve agricultural production. And thousands of children were supported to go to school against all odds. These results, which are just examples of the many positive results that I have personally witnessed in many areas of the Northeast, can be attributed to the strong coordination with the government of Nigeria, extensive engagement, and generous funding by member states. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, despite these achievements, many challenges remain as the conflict and population movements continue. Prior to this crisis, the region was already marred by chronic development challenges. Humanitarian assistance has stopped people from slipping further below emergency threshold, but it has not addressed underlying vulnerabilities and problems. In the absence of a political solution, this crisis will continue through 2018. Whilst a robust and improved communication response will be essential, especially in the hard-hit Borno State, the protracted nature of the crisis creates new needs which require longer-term assistance. For the 1.6 million people who are displaced from their homes and communities that host them, we need to find durable solutions. This requires longer-term planning horizons, more strategic interventions, and flexible longer-term funding. The 2018 Humanitarian Response Plan is therefore underpinned by a multi-year strategy that demonstrates a commitment by the international humanitarian community to align this response to the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, the Buhari Plan, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Partnership Framework. It is a step towards strengthening the humanitarian development and peace nexus in line with the new way of working and commitment made at the World Humanitarian Summit in May 2016. Capacity building for local partners and government counterparts will also be prioritized to strengthen national response mechanisms. We aim to promote what we call localization of the response, which means investing in the institutional capacity of local and national responders, including national NGOs and local government counterparts. Gender-sensitive programming will also be strengthened. Thematically communicate with and listen to this of Korea with this organization. The total donated to the humanitarian response last year, including the humanitarian response plan and the non-humanitarian response plan that also targeted Northeast intervention, reached $945 million. I think we need a clap. That is roughly well over 340 billion naira. We have also committed this year to include any carryover from last year so as to be entirely transparent when it comes to funding. Excellencies, ladies, gentlemen, colleagues, the carryover from 2017 HRP to the 2018 HRP is estimated at $196 million. This means this sum has already effectively been raised and allocated to the 2018 HRP. We estimate, however, that most of this carryover will be exhausted in the first quarter of the year, and I call upon donor representatives to start pledging resources to the 2018 Humanitarian Response Plan. While we are aware that other large-scale crises also require donor attention. It is essential to continue this positive momentum and build on the results we achieved last year. Should we fail to meet our target, it could undermine the progress made to date and ultimately impact our ability to save lives. As your humanitarian coordinator in Nigeria, my call to all of you as government, as donors, as member states, as operational partners, as members of the press and civil society, is to continue the outstanding work of recent years. I count on you for your continued support to the people of Northeast Nigeria. Let us work together to save lives today and also restore stability to the region, end this crisis, and save lives for tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Well, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the UNRCHC just gave us a very comprehensive look at what has gone on in the past year, the incredible work that his colleagues in the UN, our family, and also the rest of the international community, as well as national NGOs, and of course, the government of Nigeria have been able to achieve. I think he underscored very well that the ultimate goal is to save lives, and what we've been able together to jointly achieve in 2018 is to save lives. We averted a very likely famine. He talked about cholera and he talked about the innovative use of a vaccine. I think at that point, I really want to, in my sort of moderating role, talk about the role that the government of Nigeria played in obtaining those vaccines. Within 24 hours of the incidence rate doubling in Maiduguri, and my professor and Egbon, the Honorable Minister of Health, will correct me if my medical terminology is incorrect. But within 24 hours of that, I was in touch with the Honorable Minister of Health in my role at the Emergency Coordination Center. Within minutes, we were in touch with Geneva to talk to them about purchasing and procuring 915,000 vaccines, cholera vaccines. Our colleagues in Geneva, together with the Honorable Minister of Health and the head of NCDC, Chikwe Ihekwazu, facilitated a process whereby within a week we were able to get those vaccines into Nigeria. We worked very closely with the Borno State government and the Borno State Commissioner for Health, Mr. Dr. Haruna, and we were able to ensure, together with WHO, UNICEF, who did an incredible job in scaling up the WASH response with their INGO partners on the ground, we were able to ensure that those vaccinations were done for 915,000 people within 1 week. I think that also deserves a round of applause. That's just a little example to show us what effective coordination, joint working can do, what a government that is committed with leadership to the crisis and leadership to saving and protecting the lives of her own people can achieve. So thank you very much, Mr. Kalon, for that excellent address. The other thing that I have to say today is that he's just referred to the new way of working, and I'm just building on from what he said as we introduced His Excellency Ambassador of the United States to speak. But, you know, the RC referred to the new way of working, and for us in Nigeria, that really speaks to localization. I think we've aptly demonstrated that today as the launch is being led by locals, by Nigerians, as Nigerians step up to the plate, as our various colleagues at state level, at community level, at federal level, step up and take the responsibility for ultimately what needs to be the lives of our own people and will always be our job. Because when the international community goes away, it is we, the Nigerians, who will remain behind. So we thank you very much, all of you, for working with us and helping us to promote that new way of working. And right now, it is my honor and my privilege to introduce as our guest speaker, His Excellency William Stewart Symington, the Ambassador of the United States of America.
Why are we here? We are here not just to do our jobs and to make Nigeria with Nigerians what Nigeria can be for all her people. But we're here to think about those individual people, not the numbers, but the individuals whose lives, thanks to the heroes and the heroines from Nigeria and from all over the world, thanks to you, you have kept alive and changed the lives of this past. Less than a year ago, many asked, was how many, and then I said, but what about jobs, agriculture, education, health, infrastructure? And he looked at me as if I was
of the 2018 HRP. I also must recognize our uncle from Oyo State, from Ibadan, His Excellency, the Minister of Communications, Honorable Barrister Shitu Ekabosa. His Excellency, the last time I saw him, threatened to find my husband a second wife if I didn't stop working so hard. So I must make sure he's recognized today. My next task, really, is I've just been told by the OCHA team that I've been promoted by the RC and I've been included into their OCHA family as the main elements of the HRP section of the program I've been invited to present. So I shall do that very, very quickly. If you look to the screen, it is presented with a Nigerian flavor, with a Nigerian twist. What we did for this year's HRP, let me walk you through the process very, very briefly, is that in line with the new way of working, in line with a Nigeria-led and Nigeria-driven response, we, as a country, we as the citizens of Nigeria, and with the leadership of the Ministry of Budget and National Planning, with the directors, Director Eloho and his team here, and many of our other colleagues, we undertook to work very closely with our UN. I don't want to bore you to tears, and there's lunch waiting shortly. It tells you that the HRP is essentially has a niche within a broader national framework. Mr. Kalon referred earlier to the ERGP, and we also look at the Northeast geographical coverage, and as Mr. Kalon has already said, the HRP covers the 3 states of the Northeast. Next slide, please. This is a timeline of activities which is included again in your documents that you have in your hands. Since we sort of started the massive scale-up, and since we really got together with our international friends and partners to ensure that people's lives were saved and to ensure that Nigeria had a very strong hand in leadership of this crisis. I'm going to walk over to, no, I won't walk over to it because the cameraman will kill me, but I will point to the sort of middle of that, which is September, or sort of slightly to the right, September 2017, when the presidency set up the Interministerial Task Force, which is headed by Her Excellency, who you will hear from shortly, Hajia Zainab Ahmed, the Honorable Minister of State for the Ministry of Budget and Planning. Many of the ministers who are her colleagues and who have been very greatly supportive and been a huge part of this work are here seated in this room today. You will see that between October 2016 and December 2016, there was a massive scale-up of food assistance, particularly, I think, over 700%, in which basically we went from feeding, I think it was about 160,000 people a month to 1.1, or was it 1.2 million? Next slide, please. This shows you basically the geographical coverage, and why I say this is a Nigeria-focused document is that you would have heard from the RCHC that the focus is on Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe states. But of course, for us, the crisis and our responsibilities don't just end where the international communities work. So in addition to supplementing the work that is being done in those 3 states, we are also, as the government of Nigeria, as our own people, are covering the 3 other states. So we have Bauchi, we have Taraba, and we have Gombe also included in those states. Next slide, please. This is a breakdown of the overall population in the 6 states that are considered to be affected by the crisis. We have 25.1 million people affected. And what do we mean by affected? We mean that their lives in some way or another have been touched, their livelihoods have been affected, their homes, their neighbors have been taken away by the crisis. Of that number, we have 10.2 million considered to be in acute need. Of that 10.2 million, 7.7 are in need in the 3 base states, as I call them, of Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe, and 4.1 are in the other 3 states. Next slide, please. This is just the data has been disaggregated, and we've also worked very closely with the National Bureau of Statistics through the Statistician General, who I certainly hope is here today. I haven't seen him yet. But this really gives you a breakdown. For me, what is really worrying, as I keep telling people that I'm only 35, but the truth of the matter is I'm in denial. So as we go to the elderly category and we start looking at those that are over 50, 59, we only have 455,000. That is a frightening demographic when you look at those, the ones that are under 18 years of age. Next slide, please. So we have here the overall people in need in figures, and I'm not going to go into it in detail, but we have this for all 3 states, and the HRP covers some of this, but if we can make this available to anybody who wants it from the Nigerian by my minister, Hajia Zainab Ahmed, and also the other sectors. Logistics, which is a critical sector. I tell people all the time that if we didn't have UNHAS airplanes to carry people back and forth from Maiduguri to Abuja, and also to take people deep field, as we call it, into the communities like Goza or like Mongono, or where they can't go by road for sort of international security regulations, we wouldn't be able to provide assistance to people in need. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Again, I've spoken to this already. That's the Nigerian government covering all 6 states, and that's the international community partnering with the point, because often people think that the international community is looking after everybody in all of those states. And oftentimes when HRPs are prepared for countries, the HRP is often done for an entire country. So when you look at other countries like Somalia, etc., one of the questions I get most often asked from donors in my role as interlocutor and in my role as sort of chief punch bag, as it were, is what is the Nigerian government doing? What exactly is the Nigerian government doing? And Her Excellency will speak to that herself. But you also need to understand that the Nigerian government Nigeria is a different case from many other countries where you all work, and that we are looking after some of the people completely in need, and the HRP does not cover, for instance, the entire country. I think that's a very important distinction that needs to be made. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. There we go. So that was a very quick run through. As I said, we can make this information available. Any of the team around, Lola, Usman, will be able to walk you through it. But really, that's a really quick look at what the sort of HRP and the process, which was really very involved working with people from various ministries and sectors who are all present here today. It involved working with INGOs, NGOs. It was a very thorough, very, very inclusive process, and it ends today with this magnificent launch. Last year or the year before, the previous launch was done in November, no, the 1st of December of 2016, so we launched a little early, but we didn't have half this many people in the room, and it really shows the job that we all have done in making this, much more widely known about and created much greater awareness. So now, it is my honor my privilege to welcome Her Excellency, the Honorable Minister of State for Budget and Planning, under whose leadership this magnificent coordination efforts have gone on, who really is your chief host today and who enables us all to do the work that we do. Hajia Zainab Ahmed.
The Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Ministers of Health, Communication, Water Resources, representatives of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, representative of the National Security Advisor, the UN Resident Coordinator as well as Humanitarian Coordinator, Mr. Edward Cologne, the US Ambassador, Your Excellency, Mr. Stewart Samilton, the EU Deputy Ambassador, the head of ECHO, the representatives of the ambassadors of Germany, Norway, and UK, Deputy Ambassador of Spain that is here today, heads of UN agencies, heads of INGOs, heads of Nigerian NGOs, representatives of federal ministries, departments, and agencies, and representatives of state governments, the country director, World Bank, the head of IMF Nigeria office, the head of African Development Bank, and the head of Islamic Development Bank. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by again welcoming you, even though the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Budget and National Planning has done that, on behalf of myself and my colleague, Senator Udo Udoma, who is currently having a meeting with the President, and indeed the federal government of Nigeria. The government of Nigeria has led from the front, creating an enabling environment in which humanitarian actors can operate in Nigeria. The federal government remains committed to continuing to coordinate efforts as well as to contribute directly to the response. Nigeria has and will continue to demonstrate strong commitment to effective collaboration with the international humanitarian community, and we will continue to prioritize activities and work jointly together with the partners. Even as we today request for support and assistance required to tackle the crisis efficiently, we are at the same time able to demonstrate leadership in world-class coordination and coherence of action by providing additional resources which have supported our military operations as well as the rebuilding of infrastructure. As of 3 years ago, access to Maiduguri alone was a major challenge. But today, there are thousands of nationals and international staff that, owing to the significant security improvements, now reside in Maiduguri and are able to work within a zone that is still referred to as a conflict zone. The Nigerian Armed Forces have recorded numerous successes recovering territories that were previously claimed by the insurgents. We commend the work that you do tirelessly. And let me also pause to specifically commend the coordination work that has been done over the last 1 year. The ECC, led by Dr. Alakija, has worked very closely with the sector MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies, with the states, with lead international partners, and all this while being supported by UN OCHA. They have done great work. Through collaboration with partners, we have made great progress in 2017. Earlier on, the UN Resident Coordinator has mentioned the Oslo Conference. Let me also state here that the Nigerian government, with the strong work and great performance of Dr. Alakija, organized the Oslo Conference that was jointly hosted by the governments of Germany and Norway. And we had, together with the UN system, held after the conference several bilateral meetings reaching out to donors, and as a result today, we can report that 70% of the 1.05 billion that we sought out to raise has been raised. This is cash in the bank. Through joint efforts, we have averted imminent famine. We have continued and to react very quickly and very positively to deadly outbreaks of several diseases. An example of the deadly cholera outbreak was eloquently made by Dr. Alakija. But there were several outbreaks of diseases as well. There was measles. Apart from cholera, there was hepatitis. And the Ministry of Health continues to react very quickly with the 23 medical teams that they have on the ground in Maiduguri working to provide medical services. Now, in 2018, the focus that we are having is we must make sure that this response, the progress that have been achieved, is maintained and that the quality is improved. The federal government will continue to provide substantial resources to combat insecurity as well as for the rehabilitation and reconstruction of basic infrastructure previously destroyed by the insurgency. We will continue to promote access to the population in need. We will continue to facilitate and enable information collection and data sharing and analysis, as well as aid in the operationalization of the plans to stabilize the living conditions for the millions of people that are affected while engaging global media and telling our own story. The federal government of Nigeria and the 6 northeastern states committed in 2016 $3.3 billion. In 2017, another $3.1 billion was committed. Again, in 2018, a similar amount is proposed. As you all know, the budget is still work in progress in the National Assembly. And in December 2017, the collective governments of the states, as well as the federal government, made a commitment to earmark $1 billion from a joint savings, which we call the excess crude account, specifically for security, and this includes security requirements in the Northeast. Now, we are here today appealing for resources to meet the immediate life-saving needs of 7.1 million people in the 3 most affected states of Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe through a multi-sectoral approach with protection as a running theme and gender as a specific focus. We understand that this is a huge task, given the current global economic environment. However, the federal government will also target 4.1 million people that are affected in the 6 northeastern states, so that no single man, woman, or child is left behind. There will be no gaps in the humanitarian response, particularly as stability is gradually being realized and people are trickling back to their communities. We want to support people to return to their homes and to return to their homes in dignity and to return to the livelihoods that they were used to before they were displaced. The government of Nigeria is focusing on 3 key priority areas. First is protection and gender. In line with the commitment of the international humanitarian law, addressing protection of the needs of 7.7 million affected women, men, boys, and girls on the basis of need, as well as on the basis of restoring their human rights and their human dignity. We also are looking at the implementing the call to action for protection and also for preventing gender-based violence. This is pivotal, and it is critical for the stability and the solutions in the affected areas, because indeed, the most affected people are women and children. We also are prioritizing localization so that this response that we are providing now will be built on existing partnership between international and national organizations through investments in national institutions so that the capacity of national service providers will be enhanced to be able to fully take over from our international partners. Thirdly, we are committed to community engagements. This is to ensure that communities that are at the center of this crisis and also the beneficiaries of the response are taken along while we take decisions on how to provide relief to them. We will plan together with the communities, and that way we are sure we will be tackling the most important needs. We will strengthen accountability to ensure community feedback in a way and manner that is efficient for planning and for implementation and for effective monitoring and evaluation of the response. We will be drawing on local knowledge as well as local resources. In addition, we will strengthen all efforts to bridge the nexus between the humanitarian and development actors in line with the new way of working. The federal government, under the leadership of the Ministry of Budget and National Planning, will continue to develop coordinated plans that acknowledge the complementarity of the humanitarian response plan. The government will ensure internally that the 2018 humanitarian response plan is supported and aligned with the federal government of Nigeria's development and humanitarian strategies as encapsulated in the Nigeria Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. Nigeria's national planning function will bring together all of the efforts to ensure success is achieved. We will ensure that there is effective delivery of essential services and that all partners that are working are provided with all the support they need to be able to work effectively. I wish to reiterate to the donors and the humanitarian partners the full appreciation of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the federal government, the state governments, and the people of Nigeria, particularly the state governments of the Northeast, who have endured untold hardship. We thank you. We appreciate the support that you have provided. We reached out and called for help, which was required immediately, and you responded. And as a result of your response, we have moved in 2017 from an acute crisis to a crisis that now we're talking about people returning to their communities. We thank you. And due to your interventions, we have saved lives. And all we have to do now is to build on that success, to work together, to ensure that people return home safely, in dignity, and return to meaningful livelihoods. Together, we will not let the men, the women, and the girls down, especially at this time when progress is imminent. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have very much to add to that. I can't really praise it. I can't really say much other than that was excellently said. Her Excellency has delivered a keynote address that encompasses all that we as Nigeria wish to say in terms of the humanitarian response and the activities going into 2018. Let's hope not 2019. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. You know, when Her Excellency spoke about the amounts of money that the Nigerian government has contributed over the last few years to this response, I didn't hear enough of a clap. So I want to say, and as we heard how much you donors, our donor friends, and our partners all have equally contributed to the response, I didn't hear a big enough clap. So I want to say thank you. The generosity has been overwhelming. The friendship and the support at a time when we needed it the most, as she said, has been incredible. We wouldn't be here today if we hadn't. Honourable Ministers, could I please invite Her Excellency Zainab Ahmed to lead you up? I would like to invite the RC, HC, Mr. Edward Callon. I would like to invite the Regional Director for WFP, UNFP, Mr. Abdou Dieng, who has not yet been recognized at this event. And Mr. Abdou Dieng arrived today from Dakar. Thank you very much for being here with us. I'd like to invite Abdou to join us. I'd like to invite on the donor representatives, the Ambassador of the United States, DFID, Debbie Palmer. I'd like to invite Richard to represent the Deputy Ambassador of the EU. I'd like to invite the Swiss Ambassador. Pippi. Pippi, please join us to represent Norway. Pippi, please join us. And I think because we're talking about the humanitarian development nexus and joining up that nexus, I'm also going to invite the country director of the World Bank, Rashid Ben Massoud, to join us. Amin Mati, IMF. No, UNICEF, my brother, please. Thank you very much. Mr. Mohammed Fall, the country representative of UNICEF, otherwise known as my number one brother. And now, the HRP. We've done it already. Okay, fantastic. Here we are. The HRP, 2018 Nigeria HRP is hereby launched. Congratulations, RC. Congratulations, Hajia. And as we celebrate this momentous occasion, I have to tell you that I'm dancing inside, not really on the outside yet, but I'm dancing inside. I would like us all, as suggested by the Honourable Minister for Agriculture very aptly, I would like to ask us all to rise. On behalf of the Federal Government of Nigeria, on behalf of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Muhammadu Buhari, on behalf of all the boys and girls, all the men and women, all of those in the Northeast who we have assisted jointly, who we have helped over the course of the past year, we would like to thank the donors. We would like to thank the international community. We would like to thank our friends, the INGO community. We want to give a hand clap and say thank you and God bless you. Thank you very much. They say that in times of crisis, I think this is a quote, one of my favorite quotes. Please be seated. We remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. At this time, our friends have spoken loudly, they have spoken eloquently, and they have come to the fore. And again, we say thank you. I would like to, before we give the vote of thanks, and the ECC team are going to come up and stand here with me for a vote of thanks as they've worked and not slept and been screamed at over the last few weeks as we got this done. I would like to invite the Regional Director of the World Food Programme, Mr. Abdou Dieng, to come up and say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ayoade. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be with you today. I would first like to really commend the government of Nigeria for their leadership. I would add also a word for the donors for their generosity to have made this process successful. A thank to the whole humanitarian community. I'm saying this because I started coming to Nigeria since June 2016 when we started this response. And compared to today, I can really say that a lot has been done. And I think it has also been said that the best achievement was to avert famine. There was a huge risk of having famine in the northeast of Nigeria, but because of your collective effort, that has been averted, and I would like to thank all of you. Thank you very much.
We now have a brief session of questions and answers. Please don't ask me any questions. If we have any, before we give the vote of thanks, and then there will be a press conference at which the Honourable Minister Zainab Ahmed, the RC, and Mr. Abdou Dieng will face the press. But for now, do we have any pressing questions or answers that are generality of the public? I don't think so, didn't think so. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, that's wonderful. So, all that is left for me to, because really the press can ask all the hard questions to the big masquerades, can't they? So they don't need to be asking me. So, all that is really, as we say thank you to you all for being here. As we talk about localization and a new way of working, this week has been a week of activities for us here at the ECC, although we've managed to sort of port ourselves to the Sheraton for the week. We've run activities with young people, we've run activities with CSOs, we've run activities with media, all in the aim of making sure that the wider public in Nigeria understand the humanitarian crisis, with the aim of engaging that next generation and making sure that they also help to ensure that this never ever happens again. This team behind me, beside me, have worked, where's Usman? Have worked tirelessly. One of them, who will remain nameless, went with me in May of 2016 into Dikwa just after it had been liberated by Boko Haram. A lot of them have worked as volunteers for many months, and some for years. And some of them are very generously funded by our donors, DFID, and also the EU, which has provided us support. The ECC was started by funding from the United States government, and we say thank you. You have enabled us to show that localization works. You've enabled us to show that Nigerians can and will do it. And you've enabled us to begin to raise up a next generation of champions for humanity. As the world faces the greatest humanitarian crisis since the Second World War, we in Nigeria are determined that our country's lot will not be as those who have been in crisis for decades. And it is only by empowering young men and young women to work and to serve that we'll be able to achieve that. So my team and I want to say thank you. Lola, Andy,
thank
Usman.
you.
Thank you very much, everybody, for coming out. The Director of International Cooperation from the Ministry of Budget and National Planning. Okay. The Minister would like to say a word. Yeah, Minister of Health. Oh, sorry. Oh, Minister of Water. Okay. Pictures. Okay. Do we have a microphone? Do we have a mobile microphone, Andy? We don't seem to have a mobile microphone. I'd like to welcome the Honourable Minister of Water Resources to the microphone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and apologies for barging in, but I was prompted by the Minister of State for Budget to say a few words, and I thought I should. First of all, let me join others, including our Minister, to thank all our donors for the efforts you've been making on the Northeast. It's good to know that Nigeria is not standing alone in this time of crisis, unprecedented crisis, if I may say, that we have been facing for the last 9 years. I'd like just to make 3 points. First of all, to say that we've been working very hard with the Minister of State for Budget and National Planning over the years on these humanitarian issues. And my ministry has been committing quite a large chunk of money annually since 2016, working on the WASH aspect of the humanitarian efforts. That's water and sanitation. And on an annual basis, we've been committing ₦1 billion for water supply and half of that on sanitation. Although we'd like to do more on sanitation if we get the right appropriation from the National Assembly. But we are not resting on our oars, and we're doing our own part. This is outside the PINE and other interventions that have been going on. Secondly, I'd like to say that while we appreciate all the efforts that are being done to alleviate the sufferings of the people currently, we also need to think long term, and that's what my ministry is doing. A major reason why we have this huge humanitarian and security crisis is because of the loss of opportunities arising from the shrinkage of the Lake Chad. This is a serious ecological and environmental problem. While we continue to intervene the whole world on issues relating to climate change resilience and adaptation plans, we have to think ahead. What is going to happen if this lake dries up? This lake was 20 less, that's about 90% loss. Before then, life was thriving when things were good. So there's a direct relationship between the humanitarian and security challenges in that region and the shrinkage of the Lake Chad. And my ministry has been working with UNESCO and other partners to hold a conference on the 26th, 27th, and 20th of February this year to look at the situation and focus more on how to save the Lake Chad. I think this is a good forum for me to announce it. I know invitations have been sent out, and we look forward to having you at that conference, which is taking place at the Hilton, 26th, 27th, and 28th of February, so that we can critically look at these issues. In my view, with the situation as it is, with 40 to 50 million people depending on the resources of the Lake Chad, with the rapid desertification, with climate change and a serious shortage of rainfall, we think that looking at it from a hydrological point of view, that this lake may cease to exist some decades to come. It's not an impossibility. So what will happen to the fate of the 40, 50 million people that are hovering around that area? Already now we are facing crisis with the herders moving southwards looking for greener pasture. In addition, we are having series of immigration challenges. The tendency is for people to move eastwards and southwards. And eastwards, we know the situation that is happening in the Central African region. Southwards, we know what is happening in and around the country with all the clashes. northwards, we see a lot of young people dying in the Mediterranean and crossing to Europe. So we should not lose focus of this, and it's important that we look at the future and the stability and existence of the Lake Chad itself. Finally, we, as one of our efforts, I was just having a word with the Minister of State for Budget and National Planning, asking me what we're doing about water supply. Well, something is being done, and in addition to the efforts that we'll be making to support the communities and the IDPs, we are looking at a long-term project, what has been on the drawing board for a long time, called the Howell Interbasin Transfer, which is an internal water transfer from Yazrim Dam into Maiduguri and then into the South Chad irrigation area. And that project is likely to start after the 2018 budget has been passed. So a lot is going on from our own end, and I do hope that we'll continue to support efforts to save the Lake Chad region, but in doing so, please let us not forget the lake itself, which is the reason why people are existing there in the first instance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. A great linkage there to the effects of climate change and to the need we all have to protect our precious environment. We have come to the end of today's program. It has been an extremely successful event, I would like to say today. The turnout has been amazing. We would like to invite you all to join us for lunch outside, and there are people outside who will show you where to go. The ambassadors and the ministers have a VIP lunch so that they can network and mingle, and of course heads of agencies in the RC. For now, I'm going to have to steal away from you the Honourable Minister of State, the UNRCHC, and Mr. Abdou Dieng for a little press conference. But everybody else, thank you so much for being here. Together we can. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, if you please move over to the left, my left. We are just preparing for the press conference. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, to the left-hand side of the stage, the honorable ministers, the RC, and the WFPRD are seated for the press conference. Can I have everybody else please leave the room for lunch? Thank you. I'm not kicking you out, but we will need some silence for the press conference. Thank you very much.
something that is of very serious concern to us. We have seen this report, some of it has been investigated. But basically, part of the things that we also find is that we take food to the IDPs, but because they need more than rice and corn, they actually themselves even take out those foods to the market to sell so that they can buy other things that they also and there was an incident where some persons have been apprehended and the EFCC is investigating and actually making some recoveries irrespective of their measure. But the cases we're seeing is getting less and less because the security
I'd like to ask for water resources. I want to ask what exactly is the ministry doing in concrete terms to refresh, regain the lake charge? I listen to what you said because we've heard about initiatives in the past. I knew of one called the Great Green Wall Project. I never heard about it again. But what exactly is going on in concrete terms about? Because basically, from literature I've read, the conflict in that region has a very direct correlation to the shrinking of the lake charge down to like 10% of what it used to be. What exactly is going on? What is being done?
Well, like I mentioned in my statement, we are going to have a national conference to address that issue. One of the key issues that has been advocated for the past few years by the Member Council of the Lake Chad is the interbasin transfer project from the Congo Basin into the Chad. This is a very huge initiative. One of the things we're trying to do is to bring in a lot of experts from all over the world from 26th to 28th of February to look at what are the possible options that we have. Is the interbasin transfer from Congo the best option? Are there any other options that would save the lake? Currently, since 2016, we've been updating a previous study, a pre-feasibility study that was funded by Nigeria in 2002, starting 2002. A study was conducted, a pre-feasibility study, which showed that it is possible to do the interbasin transfer. That is the general consensus among the NCBC countries. We should transfer water from the Congo Basin. About 5% of the total water that is in that watershed flows endlessly to the Atlantic Ocean. That study was conducted and showed that it's technically feasible to have that interbasin transfer. But more work needs to be done. So in 2016, additional work commenced to enhance that feasibility study, and it's still ongoing. And I expect that at that conference, the team that will be working on that will come and maybe make a presentation of how far they have gone. But the issue is, a lot of people or a lot of interests don't seem to want the interbasin transfer. A number of reasons. But what we are after is the survival of that lake. And for us, if it means the interbasin transfer is the best option, we'll have to take it. We want to have a consensus on what is the best. First, a consensus that the lake will be safe from extinction, and secondly, a consensus on the best way to do it. And that's what the conference is about. But like I said, studies are ongoing. And in the meantime, this is the mindset that we should have that interbasin transfer. But we're open to other possibilities and other options. Thank you.
Sorry. The lady. Yeah. My name is Joke Falaju. I write for the Guardian newspaper. My question goes to the resident coordinator. I want to know, with the crisis across the world, Nigeria not isolated, how optimistic are you that we'll be able to raise this $1 billion targeted for this 2018 humanitarian response? And then there are fears that the funding may go down this year. How are you looking at raising this kind of funds?
We did it last year. We were able to mobilize an enormous amount of resources thanks to the Oslo conference and thanks to the visit of the UN Security Council that actually resulted in raising awareness on the impact of the Boko Haram crisis. The international recognition of the crisis is now everywhere, which is a very simple language. And people know that if there is one crisis that can be resolved, is the Boko Haram crisis. because Nigeria still has a functioning government in place. And I must tell you, to be a little bit political, it is still not polarized as other crises like Syria and Iraq. So the chances that it can be resolved is high. And that is why we call on international donors to come and join forces with the government of Nigeria to find a solution to this crisis. Because if there is one in the world today who can be resolved, it's the one who is Nigeria. On the second front, we are also discussing, member states are also discussing Oslo II conference again, to explain to the international community what has been done in Northeast Nigeria by the government of Nigeria and the international community, and also request them to build on that effort so that we can work towards finding a solution. I am at this point optimistic. I am not saying that we are going to mobilize the same amount of resources we mobilized last year, but I am positive that the donors will still come and work hand in hand with the government of Nigeria to address the crisis in the East.
Thank you. My name is Felix Uboja. My question is for the UN Resident Director. You spoke about the localization plan. So, which is about building local institutional capacity and all that. I think it's very commendable. I'd like if you can speak more specifically to that.
Yes, localization is quite an important issue for us, especially this year. It has a direct relationship in improving the quality of the response in Northeast Nigeria. What we are looking at, more mentoring for local NGOs, working with international NGOs and the UN system, so that they are familiar with our processes and also they are familiar with the huge fiduciary risk that is involved in managing international resources. I want to also tell you, I have personally allocated $1.5 million that will be used to start building capacities of national NGOs to be able to understand at least the basic project management cycle for humanitarian response and to some extent development. Because we all know that these are people who have to do this job. We are only here for a short time. So those investments are in place and we are going to build more on that investment in 2018. We also have challenges. We still want to see the government institutions in the local government area. In some of these areas, there are no government officials present. So we call on the government authorities to, especially in areas that have been liberated, to encourage the government staff to return back to this area so that we can have counterparts to start working with. That is one of the challenges we are facing. But I hope this is good. This is something that's going to happen this year. But be rest assured, it's very much on my agenda, and as I've told you, I have personally allocated $1.5 million to start working towards building capacities of national NGOs.
Okay. My name is Amos Aluko. I report for the Punch newspapers. My question goes to the Honorable Minister of Health. So there was some intelligence last month that some communities in the Northeast that are still under the control of the Boko Haram, maybe of course still within the enclave now, that polio was discovered among children living in those communities. And then, of course, one of the humanitarian agencies working in the Northeast said that they could not reach that region because it's still under the control of the insurgents, and that polio was discovered among the children at a time when we thought that we had kicked polio out of Africa. So my question is that has this got to the attention of the Ministry of Health, one, and then if it has, is there some form of synergy between the Ministry of Health and these international humanitarian agencies so that they can get to vaccinate, get access to those areas and get to vaccinate these children? Is the government working with maybe the State Ministry of Health down to the local government, the primary health care centers to get this done? Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're working in synergy with both international agencies as well as the state government in addressing the polio issue. We have not really picked any case of polio since the 4 cases that we picked in 2016. Surveillance is ongoing, and the IMB, in fact, is working closely with Nigeria, and that is the National Monitoring Board. Is working closely in concert with Nigeria to step up surveillance. We recognize that it is not over until it's over, so we're working hard to raise sampling, not only looking at AFP, that's acute flaccid paralysis, we're also looking at strokes. to know if there are even vaccine-derived types or even the environmental variants. So we are quite on top of this. We are also working with the military. There is a program that we call Reach the Inaccessible Children. The military is creating security corridors. They are not only creating security corridors, they are also helping with immunization. So we are quite really addressing this. But I can assure you, no new case has been discovered. We are not going to hide it. What we've told the international community is that Nigeria, this present administration will be transparent, we will be honest, and that's the legacy we want to leave behind. Whatever we have, we will disclose it.
Yes, sir. This goes to the UN. So what would be the focus of intervention in 2018, and how much do you think would be needed to achieve this plan? Can we?
I think we have already answered this question. I paraphrase it in one word. Our priority is to continue saving lives, but also try to support people to start rebuilding their lives in areas of return. And we are requesting $1 billion from the international community for this in 2018. We have already carried over 186 million to start the response. But I want to put in sharp focus. Those carryover are only enough for the first quarter. And I don't want us to miss it target. But the AFP will not be able to continue providing food after April if more additional resources are not in. So we should not use that figure badly. And we should try to be conduct. We are trying to be transparent as much as we can.
Let me just add that also for us, also in the government, we are focusing on protection of women and girls, as well as ensuring that gender-based violence is as much as possible limited. We're also trying to strengthen working together with the UN system, localization of the response, so that we have our people, our institutions, having the same capacity as skills as time goes on as the humanitarian partner, so that they can take over when our friends and partners come to.
We have two more questions. I have one right here.
Yeah, Honorable Minister, we're talking about along the borders with Cameroon, from the north central to southern Nigeria, we also have a burden humanitarian situation. This is not also touched by 47 asylum seekers were returned, possibly returned by Nigeria to Cameroon. What is being done in this? Because there are fears that those return would as well increase the violence there and also push more people into Nigeria. And that's not good for you.
But let me thank you very much. That's an excellent question. It gives me an opportunity to inform the audience that beyond the HRP for 2018, we are starting very quickly a medium-term plan that is going to be focused on creating the nexus between humanitarian and development. And this is a plan that will be a national plan. It will not be a plan that is addressing the northeast, because indeed we have crises in Benue, we have in Kaduna, we have in Plateau, the Taraba, several areas. And even in the Niger Delta. So the plan that we are doing, the medium-term plan for 4 years, will be a wider plan to cover the whole of the country. The returns that have been made is an issue that not everybody agrees that issue has been made. There are consequences to that, but the security services and the Ministry of Interior have their reasons for having done that. But this is not something you see happening again, because we have been accommodated by our neighbors. They took in our people, they supported them, and a lot of our people are still out in Cameroon, in Niger, and in Chad.
I'm going to take one last question and then ask the panelists and the ministers if they have one word to say to the media, as well as the regional director, RC, and the ministers. That last question is from the gentleman.
Thank you, my name is Tim, and my question is this.
We can't hear you.
My name is Tim. My question is this. Now that there's much talk about Boko Haram being defeated, do you think it's time for the IDPs to go back home? And when would the congestion of the camps begin?
Well, the returns of internally displaced persons, not just in the camps, to the previous communities, are started. But these returns of the necessity has to be following the international laws. There is no intention by the Nigerian government to compel IDPs to return to their communities. We're trying to convince IDPs that your communities are ready to receive you. They have to voluntarily want to return, and we have to assist them in those returns. So 2018 is a year that we will be witnessing significant returns supported by government of displaced persons back to their communities.
Thank you very much, everybody. We're going to take statements if there are, just in 1 or 2 sentences if we have any, because the honourable ministers must leave now. So we'll start with that.
Thank you. Maybe just a clarification, because the more I listen to people, we talk about, let's say, food. When we talk about food, everybody believes that WFP is only providing food. What we do is food assistance. There are people receiving food depending on the analysis made in certain areas. There are other people receiving cash, and with that cash they can get access to food or something else that they need. This is the combination we're doing here in Nigeria for really those who require food assistance. The second issue that I want to highlight is when it comes to food, the majority, more than 75% of the food given to those who are in need of food assistance, that food is procured locally in Nigeria. It's not imported food, very little, some specialized food. So I wanted to really clarify that, and again come back to the issue about the needs. The needs are still very high. When we talk about food assistance, the requirement to assist for the 1.1 million people is about $200 million. Out of that, $60 million are required up to June. But in addition, it was mentioned that the logistics to move the humanitarian and move from the state to the very hard to reach area, there are some needs which are related to logistics, and all that are figured out in the plan.
Only 2 points I will make. There is a perception out there that resources that are being mobilized by the humanitarian community is taken out of the country. But I also want to tell the audience today, as my colleague, Mr. Berg, has reiterated, that last year alone, the World Food Program procured over $200 million of food in Nigeria to support the operations in East Nigeria. In addition to that, we are investing in the logistic infrastructure, in moving this humanitarian response, which is also adding to the local economy. And last but not the least, we are also providing cash assistance, which is enabling people to acquire other basic needs that they need. So that perception needs to be corrected. Nigeria is a unique case in which most of the resources are spent in Nigeria, and it's having a replicating effect on local economies where they are being spent. The second thing is to the media. You are our friends, but at times you are our enemies. Yeah? But what I call on you is for us to tell our story correctly, coherently, and accurately. I use the word correctly, coherently, and accurately. Why? Because it is critical that we inform the public accurately what the humanitarians and the government and others are doing to respond to this crisis. Let us try to avoid politicizing it. But I can tell you that humanitarian assistance, from my 30 years of experience, is a political business. It's politics. Too much of it. So just bear in mind that we try to be transparent here, and Nigeria has been doing it. And all of our colleagues can account for every code that has been provided to them. They can account for every code. And also, all these monies we are getting are all present on their website. How much they have used, how much is left over, etc. So when it comes to issues of transparency, please be rest assured that we try to account for the resources we are getting. And if anybody has a problem, we are not able to great learning system. About any problem of accountability, please come to me. Ask me, and I will reach out to that organization. But we have nothing to hide, and that is in my relations. Our books are open, and the government of Nigeria has a procedure to ask. To ask the United Nations to account for resources where they are, to understand what happened. But let's be friends, and let's tell our story accurately and thoroughly. Thank you.
Let me again thank the Board Committee for the response to the call to the abuse, and specifically thank the UN system for the various interventions that they continue to provide. 2018 will be the year when we'll be concentrating on aiding people to return safely to their original communities. It will be a year that will concentrate on providing, supporting people to return back to their livelihoods. There is a lot of work that needs to be done. Part of the work includes mining fields and farms so that people, when they go back to their communities, they can travel safely and also go back to the farms safely. What we launched today is the plan, so the work is just starting. We have a lot of work to do to mobilize the resources to fund the plan, and then we have a lot of work to do to break down the plan into small implementable units so that on a day-to-day basis each sector is making progress. And then special thanks to the press for being here today. Also, we thank you in advance for continuing to keep the faith and continue to track the humanitarian response.
Thank you so much. I think the launch will also provide us with another opportunity to thank the international community. It's been a wonderful performance. We want to appreciate you. And without you, we would not have gone far. And I think we've been able to deliver an improved quality of less overview. For the executive, as stated by the Honorable Minister of State, our job is to really work on the HRP, particularly with respect to the sector, and how we interface with water, with education, food, and so on, so that we can really bring it to the doorstep of our people. All these are interconnected. But much more importantly, our focus will be on 4 areas. One, to look at the public health outbreaks. We had a meeting with the Minister or our Commissioner on Monday. Then we'll focus on measles, on cholera, and polio. We'll keep on searching. We are now going to ask to be certified polio-free until we are sure that truly we can convince the international community that we are free of polio. But one other area which has been not too addressed in the past is the mental and psychosocial well-being of our people. To me, this is going to be the new sector that we are going to focus on, apart from the maternal and child health issue, looking after pregnant women, their needs and so on. All these will receive tremendous support in 2018.
Thank you. I think we cannot say enough. I join my colleagues in thanking the international community, the donors, the development partners for all the efforts that they have been making to secure the peace and the social well-being of the displaced people of the Northeast. We'll continue to do our bit, as the Minister of State has said, especially from our own sector, looking at the wash, as water sanitation and maintenance, so we'll continue to make our own contributions. But at the same time, the message I want to leave here is that we should think of the layers. We cannot just, it's important to have this Humanitarian program of huge population and displaced and so on. But we also must continue to think about the root causes of this problem. And once peace returns, we don't want to win the battle and lose the war. So we must also begin to think about the future in so many respects. Getting people back to their communities. The Minister has talked about the addressed. The whole life there revolves around the nation. I think to continue to do these things without thinking about the future of the child, the future exercise in the long run, we must come back to it. So the idea will be to address it better, and the time is now.
Thank you very much, Honourable Ministers. Thank you very much to the RC, the Operational Director from WFP. I know that there are a couple of you who would like to do individual interviews. We can jump outside, but for now, the press is finished. Thank you very much, everybody.
Good job.
We check with Meta whether the director
Yeah, I think I've left him. Yeah.